Hey everybody, welcome back to Race of History. Today we're getting into the next Kings and Generals Caesar video, Caesar versus Ariovistus. Let's get into it.
The Suebi, led by their king Ariovistus, had first arrived in Gaul in 63 BC as mercenaries for the Sequani and Arverni in their war against the Aedui, a Roman ally. The 15,000 warriors that Ariovistus initially brought proved decisive, helping to secure a crucial victory over the Aedui at the Battle of Magito Brega, which forced the Aedui to become a tributary to the Sequani. In response to this, the Aedui sent an envoy, Diviciacus, to ask Rome for help, but
so Diviciacus is a part of this Gallic tribe that gets beat with the help of Ariovistus and his Germanic tribe. He is actually a druid in Gaul. He is, part of this tribe that is a long-standing Roman ally. And so that is how Rome learns of all of what is happening here, is through Diviciacus.
The Republic was still recovering from the political shock of the Catiline conspiracy and was distracted by an Allobroges revolt. The governor of Transalpine Gaul was ordered to help Rome's Gallic allies when possible, and in 59 BC, the Senate named Ariovistus a friend of the people of Rome to pacify him and keep him in check. Ariovistus used that time to consolidate his position. After helping the Sequani, he demanded a third of their lands as payment. The Sequani gave in, and Ariovistus began moving more of his people across the Rhine to settle in this new land. By 58 BC, as many as 120,000 Suebi had now crossed the Rhine and made their home in Gaul.
Yeah, so the issue here is, obviously, they called on the help of Ariovistus and his, Germanic tribe and allies. However, once they help, Ariovistus essentially just decides, okay, I'm going to stay, and starts, kind of loading the region with Germanic tribes people. And so it destabilizes a lot of what is happening in Gaul. Therefore, the Gauls eventually are going to essentially reach out for help.
Furthermore, Ariovistus was demanding more Sequani territory in order to settle an extra 24,000 Germans and had been taking hostages in order to keep the Sequani and Aedui obedient. Something had to be done. Following his victory over the Helvetii, Caesar had taken some time to rest in Bibracte. Whilst encamped there, he was visited by a council of Gallic leaders and diplomats, led by Diviciacus. They complimented Caesar on his victory and implored him to intervene in the situation, pointing out that if the Germans continued their conquests, soon the Suebi would be directly bordering Roman territory. Caesar, again, was happy to oblige. As Ariovistus was a friend of Rome, however, Caesar could not immediately go to war. Instead, Caesar first invited Ariovistus to meet him, which was declined. Then he sent a diplomat to Ariovistus, asking him to return the Gallic hostages he had taken and to stop any hostilities.
This is actually very interesting. So the way that Ariovistus declines is by essentially telling Caesar, Caesar says, okay, let's meet. We have, a lot of things to talk about. And Ariovistus says, well, if I have something to say to you, I'll come to you. If you have something to say to me, you come to me. So Caesar then responds with a little more forceful letter, essentially saying, okay, you're going to release the hostages. You're going to stop moving more tribes people over. It was a lot more direct than let's meet and talk about these things. Cassius Dio has the opinion that Caesar is doing this to provoke Ariovistus. Caesar kind of frames it as if Ariovistus is just being kind of stubborn, unwilling to like kind of give a little here. Cassius Dio is like, nope, Caesar knows what he wants, but Ariovistus is a friend of Rome, and so he's specifically trying to provoke him into a battle.
Caesar reminded him that if he were to comply, the Romans would still consider him a friend of Rome and not take any action against him. This was a good deal for Ariovistus. He'd be allowed to keep the lands he had already taken from the Sequani without a fight. Instead of accepting the terms, Ariovistus doubled down and sent a message back to Caesar saying that if the Romans could conquer where and how they liked, so could he. At the same time, the 24,000 new Germans who had crossed the Rhine were allowed to raise and pillage the Gallic lands as they pleased, with more Germans preparing to cross the river to join Ariovistus. Caesar now had his justification, as he had a legal decree from the Senate to protect Rome's Gallic allies. He could justify that the Suebi were threatening Rome's borders, and Ariovistus had forfeited his status as a friend of Rome by continuing to pillage the land of Rome's allies. Yet again, Caesar had the chance to market himself as the saviour of Gaul. Gathering his 6 legions, roughly 30,000 men, Caesar set out on the warpath.
That's actually really important, that Caesar is marketing himself as the savior of Gaul, because his writings are doing just that. They are marketing in every direction. It's such an interesting read to read Caesar and Gaul's, his writings in Gaul, because he's talking to Romans and he's talking to the Senate and also to the people of Rome. So it's like a political document, and then it's also a document that's made to kind of build him up in the mind of everyday Romans. He also, seems to be speaking kind of into the future, like trying to build himself up as the good guy in this situation going forward. And so even though he's killed a lot of Gauls up to this point, as soon as there's a Germanic tribe, brought into it, boom, he immediately switches. Now he's going to be the savior of Gaul. And this is why there's a lot of bitter back and forth between whether this tribe is actually Germanic or not. Because you can see here how, framing it as if he is going to be the savior of Gaul, he would need an outside threat. So there are historians that believe that he takes a Gallic tribe, switches them around, makes them German, and then that's the outside threat. There are also historians on the other side that say, no, the Roman historians that call Ariovistus tribe Gauls actually were wrong, and they thought all barbarians were the same, and it's that sort of thing. But this is the argument for why he would mischaracterize them. This is why, right here, because he needs the threat of an outside power to be the savior of Gaul.
Both Ariovistus and Caesar recognized the importance of Visantiyo, the largest town in the Sequani territories. Well fortified and well supplied, it would be crucial to the war effort. Both forces began marching to the town. However, the Romans, marching day and night, were able to get there first. Caesar rested there briefly while supplying the legions. But as they rested, rumours began reaching the men of the strength and ferocity of the Germans. Even some of Caesar's officers began having their doubts, and it almost seemed as if Caesar would have a mutiny on his hands. Caesar was, however, able to restore order by insisting that he would face Ariovistus with just his most trusted 10th Legion if none others would follow. This inspired a fanatical loyalty in the 10th Legion, whilst the others, motivated by shame at being thought of as cowards, rallied, and the legions began to march out to meet the Suebi.
The 10th Legion really is badass, though.
Ariovistus, impressed with the speed at which the Romans had been able to move and take Visantiyo, sent messages to Caesar asking for a meeting, with only some cavalry allowed as bodyguards at the place called Vosges in modern-day Alsace. Caesar agreed, but the meeting did not go well, with both generals reiterating their positions. Ariovistus even went so far as to say that if he were to kill Caesar, there would be many in Rome that would be grateful, showing that he knew what the political situation in Rome was. Negotiation.
He also gives an olive branch here, like Caesar had tried to do in the last bit of letters, essentially saying that he would let him keep the land and that sort of stuff. Ariovistus here offers an olive branch in saying that essentially, I'm going to wipe out your army if you don't take them out of the country right now. But if you do, I'll remain a friend of Rome. I can kind of be your, for lack of a better term, muscle in Gaul whenever you need something done. So you see this kind of back and forth play here between Ariovistus and Caesar all the way up to the battle.
Broke down after this, and the cavalry on both sides had a minor skirmish before retreating back to their respective camps. A few days later, Ariovistus asked for another meeting. Caesar, sensing a trap, sent his translators. This was just as well, as Ariovistus promptly captured the two and even considered burning them alive. With his plan to capture Caesar having failed, Ariovistus instead moved to battle. His army was composed of 6,000 cavalry, 16,000 light infantry, and the rest heavier infantry, for a total of around 30 to 40,000 men. Taking Caesar by surprise, Ariovistus marched his force quickly behind Caesar's position and set up camp, cutting off the Romans from their supply lines. For 5 days, Caesar drew out his army in battle formation, willing to give battle, but Ariovistus was content to wait and strangle Caesar's supply line, only engaging in cavalry skirmishes. The Suebi cavalry fought in a unique fashion. For every horseman, there was an infantryman mixed into their formation. These men were lightly armed in order to keep up with the cavalry, and together provided a flexible and difficult force to handle, and the Roman cavalry got the worst of the fighting. Caesar, knowing that he would have to do something to break the stalemate or else risk being starved out, formed his legions into 3 lines. He marched this force past the Suebi position and ordered the 3rd line to begin construction of a second camp, whilst the first 2 lines formed up to defend them. Ariovistus sent all of his light infantry and cavalry to harass the legionaries, but seemed reluctant to commit his entire force, and so they were easily held off by the Romans. With the second camp complete, Caesar left 2 legions and part of his auxiliaries to defend it, whilst his other 4 legions returned to the main camp.
This is one of the really interesting and unique parts about the way that the Roman military works and moves, and the way that they use their military on the battlefield when it's not in an actual battle, and that is the camps. The camps are big structures. The soldiers know how to make them. I mean, they have it down to an art. And so you can imagine how if you're an enemy army and you go to a battlefield, you set up your camp in the way that you set it up, and you wake up the next morning and there's just this massive fortress, this massive encampment across the field where literally there was nothing there the day before. You can imagine how much that could change the strategic balance on the battlefield.
Realizing that Caesar would now be able to use this second camp to reconnect with his supply line, Ariovistus sent part of his army to attack this second camp. The fighting was tough, lasting from midday into the evening, but eventually the Romans were able to repel the attack and even took some prisoners. Upon questioning these Suebi, Caesar learnt that Ariovistus had apparently been told by his priests not to commit his army until after the new moon, which was why he had not used his whole army to prevent the legions constructing their second camp. Having learnt this, Caesar decided to go on the offensive. Leaving a small garrison in each camp, Caesar formed his 6 legions into a triple-axis formation with his cavalry in reserve and marched on the Suebi camp. The Germans came out to meet him, forming their wagons and baggage train into a semicircle behind them, their women standing on them urging the men on. Noticing that the German left flank was slightly weaker, Caesar positioned himself opposite on the Roman right and gave the order for his men to charge. But as he did, the Suebi also charged. Their assault was so fast and surprising that the Romans had to drop their pila before they could even throw them, drawing their swords and fighting in hand-to-hand combat. The Germans managed to form a shield wall, and neither side seemed able to gain an upper hand. Having been unable to throw their javelins before charging, the Romans struggled to break the shield wall as easily as they had at the Battle of Bibracte. After some hard fighting, the Roman right, led by Caesar, started to push back the German left. However, the Suebi on the right outnumbered their Roman opponents and were starting to get the upper hand. The Roman cavalry, led by the son of Triumvir Marcus Licinius Crassus, Publius, had not yet engaged in the battle, and from his position he could see the Roman left starting to crumble. Using his own initiative, Crassus led the third line, which had been kept in reserve, to support the flank, arriving just in time to avoid a disaster.
Okay, so what do you guys think about this? Do y'all think that it was really Crassus that saw this, that called it, that helped save the battle? Or do you think that is more political maneuvering by Caesar, throwing out Crassus's name here?
With their left flank broken and their right now under severe pressure, the Suebi army broke and ran. It is not known how many people died in this battle, but the Germans attempting to retreat through their wagons were said to have been packed so tightly that the dead could not even fall over. The entire Suebi force, including Ariovistus, fled back across the Rhine, pursued by the Roman cavalry. Caesar had won 2 important campaigns in one season. For now, he left Labienus to winter with the legions in Sequani territory, whilst he attended to his governing duties in Cisalpine Gaul. But by wintering his legions in Gallic territory, Caesar was making a point. This was beginning to look less like intervention and more like occupation.
Yeah, there's a quote from a historian that is really, really great with this part of Roman history. I'll pull it up and have it ready for the next video, but he talks about how the Gauls perceived this, how they perceived Caesar leaving his legions out to winter quarter in Gaul, like out in Gaul. It was a big deal. It gives even the ones that are the Gallic tribes that are pro-Roman, they see this as really telling about Caesar's intentions here.
With the Germanic threat dealt with, Caesar would be able to turn his attention to Gaul proper. Our series on the Gallic Wars is just starting, so make sure you are subscribed to our channel and have pressed the bell button.
Okay, so that was Caesar vs. Ariovistus. Like, comment, subscribe. I will get the next Caesar video out tomorrow, and I'll see you guys then.